Hi, my name is Evelyn. I go to the University of Washington in Seattle. Currently, I am undeclared, but hopefully, I'll be studying informatics. The language that I've been studying is French. I've studied it for 4 years in high school, and I took it for one course at my university, which is how I got introduced to TalkAbroad.
My name is Asia Deacon. I live in Denver, Colorado. I am a senior at University of Colorado, Denver. I'm getting a Bachelor of Arts in Communication and a minor in Spanish language.
In high school, I was enrolled in the International Baccalaureate program. And so I was required to study a language for 4 years and able to graduate with the diploma. And I really enjoyed studying French, but I felt that the classroom environment wasn't always the greatest. Our teachers were always really good, but the students always kind of lacked motivation. We weren't really motivated to speak in French or really encouraged to participate.
I've been speaking Spanish since I was in first grade. So I went through a program called dual language through Jefferson County Schools, which is my school district that I went through. Half of my day was in English and half of my day was in Spanish. And it was that way up until I was in sixth grade. My junior year of high school, I visited Spain for the first time. Loved it, fell in love. That was kind of my aha moment. I'm, so good at this language. I've been working for it for so long. And now I think that I can possibly make a career out of it. And so that's what made me decide to do it in college.
I think that another thing why students are so unmotivated to speak is because sometimes there might not be great examples of what the language does sound like naturally, like how a native speaker would speak it.
A lot of my teachers were, interestingly enough, bilingual as well. First language English, second language Spanish. And I think I looked up to those people a lot because I knew that I obviously didn't come from a Spanish background. And so I wanted to take the advantage of learning as much as I could and absorbing as much as I could and becoming successful in it. I had obviously been exposed to Spanish in my life a lot more than maybe a lot of the other TalkAbroad users have been.
Before my very first conversation, I was really nervous because I've never spoken to a native speaker before, especially someone who is a stranger to me. So that was very intimidating. And I was feeling kind of overwhelmed. Like, what if there's a lull in the conversation? What if something goes wrong? What if internet is bad? There were a lot of thoughts going on.
I did try to pick people who were female and within my age range, so early 20s. For example, it was my second to last conversation that I did in the summer, so I did 4 15-minute conversations. And I told her about the BLM that was going on and sort of the social issues that we were dealing with, even in the city of Denver. The Capitol building underwent a lot of graffiti and a lot of destruction when all of the parading was going on and all of the gathering downtown. And I was able to express that to her, and she was like, wow, I wouldn't have ever known that. And where I'm at, everybody's still on lockdown. So it was just interesting to get not only the benefit of the conversation itself in Spanish, but to learn about what was going on in her world from her perspective.
Sharing my interests with someone else who's so far away makes me more motivated to learn and speak French. I feel that there is a greater motivation for me to connect with others. And now that I see that there's a possibility for me to easily connect with others, I want to do it more. I know that there's more people out there who share similar interests as me. So why should I just stop learning French here? Why shouldn't I continue?
But when you're one-on-one with somebody who has spoken the language their whole life, it becomes more of a direct and almost more of an intimate correction. I think it can be a little bit more nerve-wracking because obviously you're not just sitting in class and having a teacher, correct you and then moving on with the rest of your day, and you may never, remember that. But when you're directly speaking to someone and they offer you that word of advice or that, helpful tip, it doesn't have to be scary because they're not a teacher, they're just a fellow Spanish speaker.
I think that I have experienced growth just because before I wasn't really exposed to native speakers. And so after speaking with people who have spoken French for all their life, I can pick up on the little nuances and details that a Francophone would have. And also, I think that speaking with someone in real time makes me try to think in French, which is something that I'm not very familiar with. It definitely encourages new ways of thinking, and it makes me, I have to think faster on my feet, which is definitely new and kind of scary, but Talk Abroad offered those in like really approachable ways, and I felt that that experience was really valuable.
Hi, welcome to this Talk Abroad workshop on personalizing learning content for your students through native speaker interactions and conversations with Talk Abroad. My name is Todd. I'm the president of Talk Abroad. In this session, we're really going to be digging into how you can use one-on-one conversation practice between your students and our conversation partners as a way to personalize what your students are learning, that they can use the language, speaking about topics that they're interested in, and how that can really bring a lot of enjoyment and passion and fun into the classroom. This is the first of 7 workshops that we're doing here. The first 4 workshops are all focused on different ways that Talk Abroad has been used by professors to improve and change their curriculum. The last 3 are focused on implementation, how to implement Talk Abroad in your actual curriculum. If you hear something in the first 4 that you want to try out, the last 3 will work well to walk through how to do that. Don't worry if you miss any of these live, they'll all be available right on our YouTube channel from here on. Without further ado, let me pass this along to our co-hosts. We have Daniel Trigo from Michigan State joining us, as well as Inbal Masar from Drake University. Take it away.
Awesome. So welcome to the first workshop on Talk Abroad, personalizing learning content through native speaker conversations. My name is Daniel, and I am a digital media specialist at Michigan State University, and I taught Spanish for many years there.
My name is Inbal. I am assistant professor of Spanish at Drake University.
Today we're going to take a look at how Talk Abroad can help personalize the content that we're teaching in our classrooms. So Inbal, maybe to start us off with, give us a state of the field. What do typical textbooks look like in the second language acquisition, especially in terms of personalization for students?
So, in that sense, sometimes there's a preset order that you have to follow that it might not be your teaching style or your, go fully along with what the order that you'd like to follow. And in terms of personalizations, there's a lot of times there's activities or online activities, individual for the students, there's listening, there's recording, obviously the ability to speak with the textbook, but there are activities that you can implement in the classroom with each other, with language learners together as well.
No, I think the one thing about textbooks, and I don't know, we'll just say this is what it is. It's neither good or bad, but because they are written for a broad audience,
correct,
they really aren't personalized, right?
Right.
And so if I'm a student and I'm taking Spanish, French, whatever I'm taking, and maybe my major is, I don't know, let's pick a major, radiology.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden I'm learning about, that standard order you mentioned, oh, here's the global warming, here's vacations. And
yep,
those are great things to talk about, but in my personal life, it's where am I going to use any of this?
Right. I mean, I honestly, having lived in Florida before and Guatemala and Latin American countries, I didn't have all the vocabulary for snow-related activities. And now that I'm in Iowa and students ask me, that wasn't something that was on my radar before. So personalizing is is something that's really important to the students, but it can't be present in the textbook as much.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of part of just how it is. So I think that's one of the really cool reasons to use TalkAbroad. When the students sign up for TalkAbroad and they are getting ready to pick their conversation partners, they get to read bios of all of the partners. And I don't know about your students, but mine always take that really highly into account.
Yeah.
Like doing tons of research. Okay, who should I talk to? Might we have something in common? Sometimes I do challenge them, find someone who might seem different than you.
Right.
But generally they try to find people that have similar interests.
Absolutely.
Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a couple of videos. Some professors have recorded some things, and we just kind of want to see how different people are using TalkAbroad. I think that's one of the things we've found over the years, as we all kind of get our own, I guess, personalized way of even implementing TalkAbroad in our classroom. And sometimes it's really cool to see how other people are doing that too.
Let's do it.
But in the other course I've used it, I mean, I haven't done it this way for a while, but I did it for several years where I would just get with the students. It was more of a conversation class, and the students tended to be very advanced, and we would just agree on topics and we'd brainstorm questions, and they'd just go and try to build a conversation off that. Or I even got to a point where I would let the students say, you pick the topic you want to talk about. You have to prepare your talking points or your questions that you're going to converse with the partner, and turn them into me before you do it. And so I had students who did stuff like, I had a student who was a double major in art that saw that one of the partners was an artist or enjoyed art, and they had a whole conversation about the value of art in US culture versus the home culture. I had a guy who was into photography, saw a partner that was into photography. They talked all about their love of photography, their equipment. So talk about, personalization. So, I mean, I just think that's the fun thing about it, that there are so many different ways that you can controlled or less controlled, focused or less focused.
I think that was a really interesting point that he made. I think he brought up two things. So the first one, he's working with maybe a more advanced class,
Right.
but we have this kind of paradigm with how much do you prep your students? Are you following the textbook? Or he mentioned, wow, like you guys come up with the conversations you want to have, and we'll take a look. How have you navigated that?
So as I listened to him, I was thinking about the first time that I used TalkAbroad was in a writing and speaking course, and it was trying to get those students to go from the intermediate level to connect into the advanced level. It was kind of a connecting course for us. And I had realized that one of the major issues was that many students in the class had not had conversations with people who were from Latin America or Spain at all. And so and they had learned Spanish up until to an advanced point without having these authentic conversations with people who didn't learn Spanish at a later age. And that to me was kind of shocking, but I thought, how can I overcome this? And a great idea was to say, well, what are you interested in? Let's write some questions. And we did exactly what he did. Let's write some questions and interview someone on this topic. So the fun thing was groups of 4 chose a topic. They interviewed students they interviewed people in Latin America on that topic. The one topic was university life in Latin America. So they had to research a little bit about it, write some questions, interview people, and then they came together. They each wrote a paper, and then they came together and created a big presentation all together on the different countries that they interviewed people from. So the rest of the students, when they presented it to them, had a new perspective on what university is and life is like in Latin America. And they learned silly things. Somebody said that, we don't walk around as much with the word of the university name on our shirts. There's not bookstores with all of these there were certain places that told them that, or, little things. We don't live on campus. We commute an hour. And the students were really interested in learning more. And that got them really engaged into a topic that they could connect with. So similar to what this professor did, we went that route as well, and the students absolutely loved it. So the important thing is they practiced writing, they wrote questions, they practiced reading, they researched about it, they practiced speaking, to informally and speaking formally as a presentation. So that was really the best way to, my introduction to TalkAbroad was the best way to use it at that moment for that class.
Cool. No, that's really cool to hear that you were using that and that transition from kind of intermediate to advanced.
Yeah.
I used it in a 4th semester class very similarly. And at first, when we first started trying to implement this, we would kind of play around and say, all right, students individually brainstorm whatever you want to talk about on TalkAbroad. And then they would go and come back. I don't know, maybe it was me, maybe it was my group of students, the partners, I don't know, but it just didn't go well. But I did exactly what you did and started putting them in groups. And so like they would form as a group, like, hey, what are you interested in?
Yeah.
And then I would say, hey, you guys get to pick. Do you want to interview everyone from one country and get varying perspectives from within the country? Do you want to do across Latin America? Do you want to look at like the way maybe male or female, different gender would answer those questions and make comparisons there? Again, doing presentations, like you said, all of the different facets, but then also that comparing culture too. And I think that made that really interesting, a little bit more than like, hey, what'd your partner say? Like, oh, we asked the same questions and we're going to...
You give them agency over their assignment, and it's what they're interested in. And they become more interested because as a group, they connect much more to it because it's kind of, there's a greater outcome for all of them together rather than an individual, the group mentality. They're working together to achieve something. So it worked a lot for me. I hear it for you as well.
Yeah, and I think too, not just to discount the textbook, but like you can use that as the launching point, right? So they would take like a little bit of what was going on there, but then make it their own, which was really cool.
Right.
All right, so let's hear what another professor has to say.
There's a lot about just letting conversation flow and getting off the questions. I've had students who say, I used the first 2 questions I had and then it just flowed. I've had students with their partners who end up, there was one who played the guitar and the other person sang. They sang together. One had a parrot. The parrot spoke Spanish. My students are laughing. So that whole laughter, humor, and speaking with my students about how we become different people according to the language. When we switch language, our personality changes a little bit. And humor is different in different languages. Might be culturally, it's different. And so they get those experiences. It's these haha moments that happen. Also, then students who are really students who are majoring in a health profession and they really want to find out about the health system. When I give them just blank topics, and I like to do that, just an area that you're interested in. So I've had students, then they do want to talk about political systems in other countries, health systems, education systems. So they go with their other major or their main major if Spanish is their minor. And those conversations flow so well because the students have a genuine interest in the topics that they're choosing. And so those may not be the heaviest on the grammar, but it doesn't matter. It just keeps boosting their self-confidence. And ultimately that is worth a lot.
Yeah, I really connect with this professor on many levels. And it's just, first of all, her enthusiasm, I honestly share it. For them to come back and say, there was a parrot in the background and it was speaking in, that's all you could hope and dream for your students to kind of get engaged in that sort of level. So I love that she said that because I have that enthusiasm with my students.
I would love to see that parrot as a
I don't know that. I haven't heard of that parrot.
I think maybe if we can get Todd to just get the parrot as one of the conversation partners.
Yeah, we need to find out.
Just a little Easter egg in there. That would be delightful. But no, she mentioned flow, which I think is really interesting. And I've seen different professors use this differently, but what are your thoughts on the flow of a conversation? If you have a topic, I always said, I don't actually care what you talk about. If we're looking for a couple answers and we have this outcome in a presentation, get that. But in 30 minutes, if you talk about anything that's interesting, like amazing. That is what I really want for you. But not everyone's like that. So I just kind of want to hear what maybe your experience.
And when I go back and I listen, this is to the credit of the partners, they really know how to get them engaged. So a student that you might not have heard speak in class as much, or you have to, really, really encourage them to speak, you hear them after that second question, you hear them interacting, and it's really a great thing to see. So I think the flow goes, sometimes the first time before they get nervous, that first time, we've talked about this before, but you notice how very quickly they relax and they're ease into conversation, and they kind of maybe almost even forget that it's someone they don't know that first time, right?
Yeah, you mentioned that aha moment, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that even kind of pertains to the flow. Like, oh yeah, like I can take this wherever. And again, that's the personalization part of this.
Speaking on personalization related to that, I do want to say that, looking back on student evaluation, something that I noticed, first of all, most of them do mention TalkAbroad, but something that I noticed is some of them, in a very positive way, but some of them say, I'm able to speak to someone at my level, and I feel more comfortable. Because in Spanish class, sometimes you have various levels. You might have someone who speaks Spanish at home and someone who just learned it, they're around the same level, who just started learning at the university, right? They're able to feel more confident that with somebody who knows what their level is sometimes, and then they can bring that confidence back into the classroom.
Yeah.
So that personalization is key there.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get, stay tuned for TalkAbroad workshop number 2, I believe, on input. And I think that is one of the really cool things, is it's personalized in terms of content,
Right.
but also level, because we know not all students in one class are at the exact same level of either comprehension or production. And so as a teacher, I love TalkAbroad.
Yeah.
Because it helps me give that individualized attention to each one of them. Especially like, I have someone who really is maybe like a novice high in my class, and then I have a heritage speaker. Like, TalkAbroad kind of like meets both of those where they
Absolutely.
are, and it's a lifesaver.
And for the heritage speaker, they can, we'll talk about this later too, but they can connect for the first time maybe with people in their country that they don't know, and they can ask questions in different regions, people in the country of origin of their family that they have either never been to or been to not many times. It's a really cool thing to see.
Yeah, definitely.
So her second point was about the students in healthcare. And I really want to talk about that a little bit, because I have a lot of students from pharmacy and health sciences. And I noticed one semester that many of them had preconceived notions about what health was like in Mexico, what hospitals were like. They had all these ideas. And in that class, I said, you know what, I'm going to assign you this. Find out, take different regions, find out what health is like there, interview various people from those regions, research about it, come back and tell us. And they learned about the healthcare system in Costa Rica, that, it's a very good healthcare system. And these ideas that they had before were broken, but in an authentic conversation rather than a reading that is not as, when you say something, when you listen to somebody tell you something, it's much more valuable than reading an article in that sense.
Yeah, no, that, and what that does for motivation too, I think is huge too.
For motivation. And lastly, when they become healthcare providers, they're not going to judge the person that comes in based on a false idea of a healthcare system. And that is so important to me.
Yeah, that is the goal that we're looking for here. All right, so we've got one more. So we're going to pull up one more video here.
They love it by and large. It's like I said, almost universally, I hear some variation on the theme of, I was really scared to do this, and I was really even anxious while I was doing it, but it was so great to be able to connect with someone. And I have students who develop relationships with their conversation partners. Like they will schedule with the same person again and again, because they find out that they have so much in common, and they want to talk about, soccer or Harry Potter or whatever it may be. And that's fine with me. Like, I do want them to talk about certain things related to the theme of the unit, but honestly, at the end of the day, if they want to talk about Harry Potter for 15 minutes to a half an hour, that's great. I just want them speaking. No, that's one thing. I was very interested when I first piloted Talk Abroad, you know, that I made sure that I got a lot of feedback from students, just because even though I think this is important, if they viewed it as torture and it was a disincentive, it was not something that I was going to implement. But they really do see the value in it, and you know, it just goes along with the fact that there, you know, our curriculum is oriented around proficiency development, and I make that very clear to students from day one. And, you know, by and large, that's aligned with their goals too. They're not taking languages because they want to fill out worksheets. They're taking languages because they actually want to use the language in their personal life and their professional life.
Wow, Julie.
Yeah. I know. I'm noticing one major theme across all three videos that we just watched. They have a goal, but their ultimate goal for their students is to feel comfortable speaking and to increase that confidence speaking. That's what it seems like.
I love the initial investigative research that she did. Like, I'm imagining her questionnaire, like, is this torture? Is this not?
I know the word torture. Yeah. But students sometimes do see things, you know, you assign an assignment and you realize, oh, you know, nobody likes this assignment, right? Yeah. That's never happened to me with Talk Abroad.
Yeah, so super cool. I just think in terms of personalization too, so we've talked about content, we've talked about like areas of interest, and Julie mentioned goals too. I really like that. Like, what are the goals of taking a language? And she says, hey, is it the ability to fill out a worksheet, or is it this, and she mentioned a proficiency-based kind of curriculum. Like, is this like me being able to communicate with someone, and like mapping what you're using onto your goal for studying a language?
Right. My goal for my students is that when they graduate and leave the university and they move on to their professional and personal lives, they will continue using the language. And I think the only way to accomplish that is to make this meaningful to them. And that's where personalization really comes in, right, Daniel, for me.
No, I agree 100%. And that connection where students want to, I love kind of walking into class a little bit early and just hearing them, oh yeah, I met with this person. Oh yeah, I know them. Did they talk about their 3 dogs that they have? Oh no, and so like there's just this connection that makes it not even just personal between the student and the Talk Abroad partner, but even the classmates. Like it just kind of frames everything.
Well, I spoke with her too, right?
Yeah, and so it gives you that connection to connect with other people too. That similar shared experience.
Yeah, she mentioned that there's students that want to pick the same person every time because they develop this relationship with them, and they said, oh, I want to see the parrot again, right? or whatever it is. But they, you know, sometimes we even have to assign them other people because they just really enjoy connecting with a certain person.
Yeah. So yeah, there's sometimes too with the same partner with a different partner. Teaching that 4th semester, I would sometimes leave it up to the students and say, hey, you can get a different experience out of Talk Abroad too. Right. Like you can go deeper with one partner. And I would even frame that like for those of you who are really wanting to kind of connect, but also start to like really test your Spanish. Like if you're serious, I mean, we were 4th semester, so we're like a novice, mid, high is probably the average. Like this advanced, you want to keep going. Meet with the same person. Yeah. Because if you meet with a different person every time, and there's nothing wrong with this, like you spend a lot of time in that like novice, intermediate, like, hi, my name is fulanito.
The getting to know you stage with any person, right? Those initial like, 3 questions.
Like, what do you study? I study this. And there's nothing wrong with it because you're connecting with different people and getting more information. But in terms of language acquisition, you're kind of just performing and interacting at the same level.
An introductory meeting every time.
Yeah.
Rather than
it's great, but it depends on what your goals are. And again, that gets to the personalization. Like you can do that. Like if that's what you need to work on and build that confidence there, 100%. If like you are someone who wants to dive a little bit deeper, meet with the same person. And then that helps you, it gives you a little bit more time to connect and get deeper every time.
Absolutely. And it helps us as professors to be able to have the option to tell a certain student who might need more interactions with various people or with the same person, we can have that option of really personalizing that for us as well.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Anything else you want to say about personalization of Talk Abroad in the classroom?
No, it is definitely great for it.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Todd, and I'm the CEO at TalkAbroad. Thanks for joining, Carolina.
Hello, Todd. Thanks for sharing this time with me today to be able to talk about you and TalkAbroad a little bit more. So could you please introduce a little bit more yourself and let us know a little bit more about you and give us a bit of a history of how TalkAbroad came out?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Nebraska, currently live out in Denver with my wife and little boy, Winston James. Yeah, Talk Abroad started almost 10 years ago now, and the history of it is interesting. I, after undergrad, ended up going down to Latin America and worked at a little microfinance organization where they were giving small loans to business people in the community to start businesses. And one of the things that I recognized is that a lot of those businesses failed, and started thinking about what types of skills do the people in those communities have, and how could those be leveraged to take care of their family and provide for their family. I thought, well, they all spoke Spanish, and they taught me Spanish while I was down there. So what if we could just connect them to students in the US who are learning Spanish but don't have native speakers locally to have a conversation with, and see if that's a good fit. So that's what we did. We came back to the States. We, a few years later, tried it out, so, kind of presented it to teachers and saw if it was something that fit some needs. And it certainly was, and that's 10 years ago now. Yeah, hard to believe it's that long.
Yeah, very long time. Great. So, and what do you currently do at Talk Abroad?
So I lead. Really, I do a couple of things. One is I set kind of the overall vision of where Talk Abroad is going and what we're doing. Secondly, I work with our leadership team. And the leadership team is composed of a number of people really focused on the operations, what happens. So you, Carolina, are on the leadership team. Jocelyn Cordero is our director of training and recruiting. We call her director of human resources now. And then Daniel Mateus handles director of support. And really, when it comes down to it, what Talk Abroad does isn't super new or complicated. People for years have been using Skype or bringing native speakers from their community into class, or doing a telecollaboration between their class and another class. What we do is really trying to make that same experience happen, but to do it at scale so that you can do that with 20 students or 60 students or 2,000 students. And when you're managing thousands of students in that, there's a lot of operations that happen. And the leadership team really is overseeing what happens on a day-to-day basis and making sure that students have their conversations and conversation partners have everything that they need. So that's my second role. And then thirdly, I work with the business development team. So I'm making sure that we can reach out and help programs that are looking to implement something like Talk Abroad, see how Talk Abroad might fit in their curriculum and successfully get started.
Okay, good. Lots of important things.
A couple of different hats.
Yeah. Okay, so you said that you work like kind of the direction of Talk Abroad and vision and everything. So could you share with us where is Talk Abroad right now, and what is the vision for the future for Talk Abroad?
Yeah. So we're just celebrating our 10th year. We're probably working with over 500 different universities and high schools, both in the US and in Canada right now. The vision of Talk Abroad isn't actually going to be changing. From the first day that we started, we thought, let's provide a tool to universities and high schools, letting them have conversation practice and interact with native speakers, build relationships, get to know each other, use the language. And that stayed exactly the same even now. Our real focus moving forward is focusing on supporting universities and professors as they start using TalkAbroad and providing resources around that. I started with a nonprofit background, and at the beginning, we just kind of took this idea and had professors use it any way that worked. And over the course of the last 10 years, we've had a lot of really great professors develop years of experience using TalkAbroad. And what we're really aiming to do is take that experience and make it available to other professors and other universities who are just starting to try and think, what if I could get my students having conversation practice with native speakers regularly during the curriculum? How would that work? And being able to take that experience from professors using TalkAbroad and put it into manuals and free workbooks that they can use to integrate this right into their curriculum with less work, and to do it in ways that they'll be really successful at. So those are the resources we're focused on developing right now, and what the next few years looks like for us.
Okay, so that sounds like the new TalkAbroad sequences where professors can find textbook and workbooks for the students, and some sequences with specific topics to be implemented in their classes, right?
Yeah, exactly, because this type of activity is really challenging for students. And so having preparation ahead of time, having some reflection afterwards, we're really looking to develop those types of activities that can support students and professors as they're getting started.
Okay, awesome. Good.
And those are called our sequences. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Professors, you can find them on our website. You're gonna love it. Okay, and I would like to ask you, with your team, I understand that, there are lots of conversation partners, and also your team is very diverse, talking about culture and language, the place where everybody lives. So what could you share with us, what are some of the main challenges that your team faces?
Yeah. Like you said, we're spread out. We're a different type of organization because we have now 150, 170 conversation partners around the world in 20 different countries. We have a management team of, I think, 10 or 12 full-time people that are working spread out across the whole world. And so there are some challenges that go along with that. One of them is simply the culture of the company. We're a little bit unique in that we started with that nonprofit direction, right? We wanted to make sure that we wanted these jobs as conversation partners to be located in areas where people really needed the work, in disadvantaged communities throughout Latin America. And that still has continued as a major goal that we have. We're a business, and so we need to make money in order to pay conversation partners and pay full-time employees and everything. But the profit of it is really just one of a number of bottom lines that we focus on. We also really focus on serving the students and the professors. We want to make sure that if students are paying money, that they're getting a high quality experience that's safe and that they want it to be a good learning experience. We also want to be serving our conversation partners, and we want this to be a job that they can use to support their family, that supports them in the stage of life that they're in. It's a healthy job they can do from home. And so those are all things that are important to us. And as we're spread out and we're not all in one building, that type of culture is a challenge to maintain and to build. We just don't have a lot of time kind of gossiping and hanging out together around the water cooler or whatever things like that are. So a few years back, we actually created a tool here internally with the leadership team, what we call the TalkAbroad ethic, which is really kind of our umbrella policy of who we are. The ethic says that we believe that people and culture have value. And because of that, we want to build relationships that are characterized by commitment, respect, and cultural sensitivity. And we kind of imagine it in a triangle where we've got the admin team or full-time employees at TalkAbroad up at the top, and then students and professors on the bottom, and conversation partners at the other one. And in all directions there, whether it's the partners talking with the students, or our admin team working with the conversation partners or with professors, those are all relationships that are being built, and we want all of those to be characterized by respect and commitment and cultural sensitivity. What does that mean? It means that the partners are trained so that they'll be respectful, that they'll be on time, that they'll provide a good learning experience for students. It means in our sales team or in our business development team, when we're working with professors, that we're committed to giving a good service at a good price, an excellent value for students, and we're selling what we're saying that we're going to be selling. And between conversation partners and the admin team, it means that we can be relied on to pay them good wages for their country, for their country where they're living. That we can support them if they have any sort of emergencies with special programs. We have a salary advance program where if they have an emergency, they can get some earnings up front, and a local fund, which is kind of a grant program that they can apply to and support their local community if there are any emergencies there. So that's kind of the overall vision of who we are, what we do, and how we kind of wrestle with being dispersed all throughout the globe and maintaining that TalkAbroad culture that we're looking for.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit of the history of TalkAbroad and the current position and the vision for the future. Thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Carolina.
¿Tiene un automóvil o tú usas el transporte de público?
No, yo tengo un automóvil, tengo un carro. He tenido un automóvil desde que empecé la universidad, porque el transporte público en Guatemala no es muy bueno, es un poco peligroso usar un autobús, así que es un poco más seguro usar un carro, aunque el tráfico es muy malo, pero es más seguro usar un carro. Bien. ¿Y tú? ¿Usas un carro, usas el transporte público, bicicleta, o qué usas para moverte en la ciudad?
Sí. Tengo un automóvil. Es necesario porque Florida es muy grande. Y mi campus de escuela es far away.
Lejos.
Sí. Pero mi esposo montar el bicicleta para trabajar. Pero no necesito el automóvil.
Creo que eso es algo muy bueno. En Guatemala es un problema. Guatemala tiene muchas montañas, así que usar una bicicleta o caminar es algo imposible realmente en Guatemala. Es muy difícil.
Sí.
Tu penses que les films américains sont différents des films français?
Je crois que oui. J'ai regardé quelques films français. Mes préférés sont Le fabuleux destin d'Amélie Poulain et Les Intouchables. Et oui, je crois que les films américains, c'est très extravagant, très... oui, avec les super-héros et les Avengers et les effets spéciaux. Et ouais, c'est plus dans l'extravagance, selon moi. Et pour les films français, il y a un peu plus de subtilité, un peu plus une morale ou un message aussi dans le film. C'est plus pour faire réfléchir avec une réflexion.